She looked at me longer than she should have, too long for just my best friend's mom. It wasn't the first time her eyes held me there, in that pause where the air feels heavier and words suddenly lose their usefulness. I'd come by just to drop something off, nothing special, nothing memorable. But the moment she opened the door, all of that fell apart. Her name was Elena. Mid-40s. Graceful in a way that didn't need announcing. She carried herself like she'd lived through storms but still chose to dress in soft colors, still chose to greet the world with a half-smile that almost dared you to look closer. And I always did. She let me in, thanked me, moved through the house in that unhurried rhythm of someone who knew how to command silence. The kind of silence that didn't push you away but made you lean forward, waiting for something more. I sat at the kitchen table, watching her pour water into a glass. The simple act looked different when she did it. The light caught the curve of her wrist, her fingers wrapping the glass too gently, as if she thought everything she touched could break. I told myself not to stare. I failed. When she set the glass down in front of me, her hand brushed mine, just for a second, maybe less. But it was enough. Enough for my throat to dry out, for the sound of the fridge humming to feel too loud, for me to want to reach back and hold on when I knew I shouldn't. She noticed. She always noticed. "You're quiet today," she said, leaning on the counter, tilting her head like she was trying to read something written on my face. I guess I am," I answered, clumsy, too quick. Her lips pressed into the faintest smile. Not mocking, not amused. Just knowing. The kind of smile that says you don't have to explain, I already understand. The seconds stretched. My friend wasn't home, I knew that. She knew that. And in that gap, with nothing but the tick of the clock and the faint smell of her perfume filling the room, the distance between us began to feel unbearable. I caught myself tapping my fingers on the table, restless, like my own body was betraying me. She moved closer slowly, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Her shoulder brushed mine as she reached across for something, unnecessary, deliberate. My breath caught before I could stop it. She stayed there, too close, her hand lingering on the counter just inches from mine. I didn't dare move. "Do you ever think," she began, her voice low, trailing off before the sentence found its end. I turned, too quickly, meeting her eyes. And for the first time, she didn't look away. There was no shield, no practiced grace, just a flicker of something raw, something she tried to swallow but couldn't. Her hand shifted, fingers grazing mine again, softer this time, almost testing if I'd pull back. I didn't. The silence thickened. My pulse was loud in my ears. She drew in a shallow breath, her lips parting like she was about to say something reckless, something neither of us could take back, and then, the sound of a door unlocking echoed down the hallway. She froze. Our eyes locked in panic and in something else we didn't dare name. "Your glass?" she whispered quickly, pulling her hand away as if nothing had happened, as if the air between us wasn't burning. But the moment was already there, etched into me, impossible to undo. The sound of footsteps faded down the hallway. It was only her neighbor returning home, not anyone who could have caught us. But the moment had cracked open something neither of us could close again. She busied herself at the counter, moving cups, wiping down what was already spotless. I sat there pretending to sip water I no longer tasted, pretending my pulse wasn't still hammering from the way her fingers had brushed mine. "Elena," I started, then stopped. Her shoulders stiffened, just for a second, before she turned with that careful half-smile again. "Yes?" The word dissolved in my throat. I shook my head. "Nothing." But it wasn't nothing. It was everything. We stayed in that uneasy quiet until she finally sat down across from me, her posture composed but her eyes carrying something else. Something heavier. "You know," she said after a pause, "I haven't had someone sit with me like this in a long time. Just here. No rush. No noise." I tilted my head. "Not even with—" I stopped myself, unsure if I should mention her ex-husband, the one my friend never spoke kindly of. Her gaze lowered to the table, tracing the grain of the wood with her fingertip. Not even then, she said softly. Especially not then. The air shifted. She hadn't meant to share that much, I could tell. But it slipped out, raw and unpolished, like a loose thread she hadn't noticed me tugging on. I should have looked away, but I couldn't. You deserve more than silence. Her eyes lifted to mine, sharp, searching. For a heartbeat, either of us blinked. Then she exhaled, the sound almost a laugh, almost a sigh. You're too young to say things like that, she whispered. Maybe she was right. I was 23. She was 46. An entire lifetime stretched between us, my beginnings, her regrets. To everyone else, it would look wrong, a boy clinging to a fantasy, a woman reaching for what she shouldn't. But sitting there, it didn't feel wrong. It felt inevitable. I noticed the way her hand rested against her neck, fingers grazing the collar of her blouse like she was grounding herself. I noticed the way her breathing quickened when I shifted closer, though she tried to hide it behind a steady expression. Elena, I said again, softer this time. Her lips parted, a response forming, but she stopped. Instead, she reached out, not all the way, just enough that her fingertips brushed the back of my hand. Light, fleeting, but deliberate. It wasn't passion, not yet. It was something more dangerous, recognition. My skin tingled where she touched me. She pulled back, as if afraid of her own courage. But her eyes lingered on mine, unblinking. The silence grew heavier, warmer, almost unbearable. She shifted in her seat, closer now, so close I felt the faint warmth of her breath as she spoke. You shouldn't stay long, she murmured. But her voice wavered, betraying her. I leaned forward, just slightly. Do you want me to go? Her answer didn't come in words. Her hand, trembling only at the edges, found my wrist and held it there, firm, unspoken, undeniable. The room went still, the clock ticking louder, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Her hand on my wrist lingered longer than either of us had planned. A silent confession. A plea. A warning. Before I could say anything, her phone buzzed on the counter. The sharp sound cut through the room, startling us both. She pulled her hand back like she'd been caught stealing. We both looked at the phone. My friend's name lit up the screen. Her breath caught. She didn't answer immediately, just stared at the name as if it were a door slamming shut between us. Then, with a shaky exhale, she pressed decline. The silence that followed was louder than the buzzing had been. You should, she started, her voice barely above a whisper. I know, I cut in. But I didn't move. Neither did she. The air grew heavier again, like it had in the kitchen before, only now it was sharper, more dangerous. Every second we stayed this close felt like balancing on a thin line, waiting for it to snap. Her chair scraped softly as she shifted, leaning toward me as if pulled by something she didn't want to admit. Her knee brushed mine. My pulse stumbled. Elena! My voice broke on her name, too rough, too unsteady. She looked at me then, really looked. And for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Not of me, but of herself. This can't, she began, stopping before the thought finished. Can't what? I asked, though I already knew. She shook her head, but the movement was slow, reluctant. Her lips parted like she wanted to push me away, yet her body betrayed her. Her hand drifted toward mine again, hovering just close enough that the warmth of her skin brushed against me without touching. The seconds stretched, fragile, dangerous. I leaned in, drawn by gravity I couldn't fight. Her breath touched my cheek, warm, uneven. We were inches apart. Inches from crossing a line neither of us could ever uncross. And then, the front door opened. Voices. My friend's laughter, spilling into the hallway. We froze, both of us snapping back like guilty conspirators. She pushed her chair away, too fast, the legs scraping the floor. I stood quickly, knocking into the table hard enough to rattle the glass. We didn't speak. We didn't have to. The panic in our eyes said it all. The footsteps grew louder, closer. She straightened her blouse, smoothed her hair with trembling hands. I shoved mine into my pockets, trying to look casual, normal. Anything but what I really was, someone caught in the pull of something forbidden. The voices stopped just outside the kitchen. One more step and the secret would have spilled out into the open. Then, just as suddenly, the footsteps retreated, my friend heading upstairs, calling out that he'd be in his room. A door shut. Silence returned. I let out a shaky breath I didn't realize I was holding. She did the same. And then, without warning, her hand found mine under the table. Gripped it. Hard. Her eyes locked on mine, wide and unguarded, no smile this time, just raw, terrifying honesty. Either of us spoke. But in that silence we said everything. Her fingers gripped mine so tightly it almost hurt, but I didn't pull away. I couldn't. The fear of being discovered still throbbed in my chest, yet it was nothing compared to the pulse of her hand locked with mine. "Elena," I whispered, leaning closer, my voice rougher than I meant it to be. She shook her head, eyes darting toward the hallway, then back at me. Her lips parted, like she wanted to warn me again, but the warning never came. Instead, she whispered, "Do you realize what you're doing? Do you?" I asked. Her breath hitched. She let go of my hand, only to lift it, hesitant, trembling, and push a strand of hair from her face. The motion left her exposed, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen before. And before I thought better of it, I reached up, brushing my fingers along her cheek, tucking that same strand gently behind her ear. She closed her eyes for half a second, leaning, just slightly, into the touch. The air between us was unbearable now. I could smell her perfume, faintly floral with something darker beneath. I could hear the uneven rhythm of her breathing, almost in sync with mine. "This is wrong," she whispered, eyes opening again, searching mine for something to anchor her. "Then why does it feel like the only thing that's right?" I murmured back, my words brushing the edge of her lips though I hadn't touched them yet. Her hand came to rest on my chest, the warmth of her palm burning through the thin fabric of my shirt. I felt her fingers curl, gripping as if to push me away, yet she didn't. "You don't understand," she breathed, her voice breaking. "If anyone knew, your friend, my son—" She stopped, shaking her head. "It would destroy everything." I leaned in closer, my forehead almost against hers. "Then tell me to leave. Say it, and I will." Silence. Her lips parted, but the words wouldn't come. Her eyes shimmered with something between fear and hunger. "Elena," I whispered again, softer this time, like the name itself was fragile. Her body swayed toward me before she caught herself. She pressed her hand harder against my chest, as if she could keep herself steady that way. But the truth was clear, she wasn't steady at all. Neither of us were. My hand slid down, brushing her arm, lingering at her wrist. Her pulse raced beneath my fingertips. "You make me forget myself," she confessed suddenly, the words raw, spilling out before she could stop them. I froze. So did she. The air thickened with what we both already knew but hadn't dared to say. Her lips hovered close to mine, so close I could feel the warmth of her breath. One tilt forward, one fraction of courage, and everything would shatter. Her eyes fluttered shut. My hand cupped her jaw. And then, a knock at the front door. We both jerked back, breathless, hearts slamming against ribs. The moment had snapped, but it wasn't gone. Not even close. The knock at the door echoed through the house like a warning bell. Elena sprang back, smoothing her blouse with frantic hands. I shoved mine into my pockets again, heart still pounding from the closeness that had almost undone us both. She crossed the room quickly, every step too sharp, too hurried. I stayed where I was, frozen, listening as she opened the door. A voice carried inside. "My friends." "Hey, Mom, left my keys. Thought I dropped them here earlier." I felt my stomach lurch. He was supposed to be upstairs. He'd come back down. I caught the tremor in Elena's voice as she answered. "Keys? Right, let me check." I could hear the shuffle of movement at the door. She was stalling, her voice pitched higher than usual. My throat tightened as panic set in. If he came inside, if he saw me standing here with her like this, then, his voice again. Casual, careless. Never mind. Found them in the car. The front door shut. Silence. Elena leaned against the wood, one hand pressed flat against it, the other covering her mouth as if she could keep her breath from spilling out. I finally exhaled, stepping toward her. But when she turned, her eyes weren't just afraid, they were something else. Something broken open. He can't ever know, she whispered, voice shaking. You understand? Not him. Not anyone. I know. My words came out harsher than I meant, desperate. Her eyes narrowed, as if searching me for cracks. And then, almost too quietly to hear, she said, Do you think I haven't noticed? The way you look at me when he's around? I froze. Her hand gripped the edge of the table, white-knuckled. You think you're subtle, but you're not. And She stopped, swallowing hard, her chest rising sharply. I've seen it. Felt it. Even when I shouldn't. The confession landed between us like fire. My body went rigid, but heat surged through me, undeniable. I took a step closer. She didn't move back. Instead, she trembled, every inch of her body screaming conflict, her hand clutching the table, her breath uneven, her eyes locked on mine as though daring me to deny it. Elena, I said, my voice low, careful. Then tell me you don't feel the same. Her silence was louder than any answer. I moved closer again, brushing past her too tightly, my arm grazing hers, her perfume filling the space between us. She inhaled sharply, like the contact burned. Her hand lifted halfway, like she wanted to push me away, but instead it landed on my chest again. Not pushing. Holding. Her lips parted, a trembling whisper escaping. This will ruin us. I leaned down, close enough for my words to graze the shell of her ear. Or it will ruin me if I walk away. She shuddered against me, her body betraying the fear her voice carried. And then, almost against her will, her head tilted, her lips brushing the air between us. The decision hung there, fragile, inevitable. Her whisper still hung between us. This will ruin us. I didn't step back. Neither did she. The weight of everything, fear, desire, guilt, pressed in, locking us in a space too small, too charged to escape. Elena. My voice cracked, rough with all the things I couldn't name. If you want me to go, say it now. Her hand stayed on my chest. Trembling. Clutching. Not pushing. She looked up at me, her eyes glassy with something she couldn't hide anymore. You're just a boy, she whispered, almost like she was trying to convince herself. But her body betrayed her words, leaning closer, shoulder brushing mine, breath hitting my skin. I swallowed hard, my hand rising almost without thought, cupping the side of her face. My thumb brushed her cheek, tracing the warmth there. She closed her eyes, shivering under the touch, and when they opened again, all her resistance was gone. I don't feel like one when I'm with you, I said. Her lips parted. Her breath caught. And then, she stopped thinking. She leaned into me, finally, fully. Our foreheads touched, her breath hot against my mouth, her body pressed so close I could feel every tremor. It wasn't polished, it wasn't perfect, it was messy, raw, human. You don't know how long I've tried to stop this, she confessed, her voice breaking. Then stop, I whispered. But neither of us moved. Her laugh was small, strangled, half a sob. I can't. And with that, the line we had danced around for weeks, months maybe, dissolved. Her lips brushed mine, tentative at first, a feather's touch, then deeper as if the dam had burst. I pulled her closer, my hand sliding to the small of her back, her fingers fisting in my shirt like she was afraid I'd vanish if she let go. The kiss was everything we'd been holding back, hungry, desperate, yet laced with the ache of knowing how wrong it could be. It wasn't about lust alone. It was about recognition, about finally being seen, about giving in to something neither of us had been able to admit. When we finally broke apart, breathless, her forehead still rested against mine. Her hand lingered at my collarbone, her thumb tracing small, nervous circles. "This changes everything," she whispered. "I don't want it to change back," I said. Her eyes searched mine, afraid and hopeful all at once. And for the first time, there was no more pretending, no more hiding. We both knew exactly what we were, what we'd chosen. Not safe. Not simple. But real. She exhaled, her body softening as though she'd given up fighting herself. "Then we don't go back," she said quietly. And I nodded, holding her closer, both of us fully aware of the risk, yet unable, unwilling, to let go. For better or worse, the choice was made. The house was quiet again, but nothing inside us was. We stayed there, pressed close, her forehead resting lightly against my chest as our breathing slowed into something almost steady. The storm between us had broken, yet the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full, humming with everything we finally admitted. Her fingers slid down from my collar, finding my hand. She hesitated, as if she expected me to pull away. I didn't. I laced my fingers through hers, holding tight. "Elena," I said softly, her name tasting different now, heavier. She didn't look up right away. Instead, she studied our joined hands, her thumb brushing across my knuckles. "You know what people would say," she murmured. "Your friend, my family, they'd never understand." "I don't care what they say," I answered quickly. Too quickly. She finally lifted her gaze, her eyes tired but soft. "But you will. One day. The weight of it." I shook my head, stepping closer until her back touched the edge of the counter. "The only weight I feel is when I'm not near you." Her lips curved into the faintest smile, fragile but real. She sighed, leaning her head against my chest again, as though she was giving herself permission to rest there. For the first time all night, I felt her body relax in my arms. We stayed like that, not speaking, just breathing each other in. The smell of her perfume mixed with the warmth of her hair brushing against my chin. My hand traced gentle circles along her back, not to stir her, but to remind her, "I'm here. I'm not letting go." After a long silence, she whispered, "You make me feel seen. Do you know how rare that is?" I tightened my hold, pressing a soft kiss to the top of her head. "You deserve to be seen. Not hidden away." Her hand squeezed mine, trembling less now, steadier. And though her voice still carried doubt, her body stayed close, choosing me, choosing this moment. We didn't need promises. We didn't need to map out tomorrow. Right then, it was enough to know that the fear hadn't won, that we had crossed the line and neither of us wanted to step back. I leaned down, pressing a slow, lingering kiss against her forehead. She closed her eyes, exhaling as if the simple touch was more grounding than anything else I could have given. When she finally spoke again, her words were quiet but sure. "Then we don't look back." I nodded, resting my cheek against her hair. No looking back. We stood there in the stillness, hand in hand, knowing the world outside would be complicated, maybe even cruel. But inside that moment, it was just us, two people who had finally stopped running from what they both knew was real. And that was enough. Sparkles, did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?